There are 3 participants in the conference. All participants are muted, but may unmute themselves.
Yeah, we'll back up to the non-agenda items.
Hi, whoever's on the line, can you go ahead and just let us know that you're hearing us and we can hear you?
I can hear you.
Who is it? I can hear you. Anyone else? Whoever's on the line, can you go ahead and just let us know that you're hearing us and we can hear you?
Gary Cunningham?
Okay, would you mind asking for your items again to see if we might have missed somebody?
If anyone's on the line that would like to address any non-agenda items, now would be the time to go ahead and let us know. Okay, we're going to go ahead and mute you for the time being.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we're ready.
Good evening. I'm going to be presenting Site Development Review 20-004. Again, the owner and applicant is D.R. Horton on the northeast corner of Florida Avenue and Lake Street. And this is for the architectural design of 74 single-family residential lots within tract 31620 and 31620-1, and 6 single-family residential lots on tract number 25168-1. This project was continued from the June 16th, 2020 meeting for the reason of clarifying several questions that had come up. One of the items was this CEQA, and if this project required a traffic impact analysis. And based on the November 18, 2003 Planning Commission meeting, Resolution 03-60 for tentative tract map 31620 was adopted. It included a finding that no additional environmental review was required for the project due to the prior negative declaration that was adopted for the project, and it had been reviewed under the County of Riverside, and since then the map has been legally plotted and recorded within the county. Also, pursuant Section 15162 of State CEQA guidelines, no subsequent environmental review is required unless there is substantial change to the approved project, a substantial change to circumstances surrounding the approved project, or new information of substantial importance that had not been known at the time of the project approval. The current project does not involve a change to the approved land use, lot configuration, number of lots, or increase to the overall density approved with the entire development. Therefore, no significant changes have been identified that would require a traffic impact analysis or any other additional studies. The illustration here shows the original map, shows the 4 phases of the map, including the built out and the unbuilt portions, and this is just to show that illustration. The other item that we wanted to clarify had to do with the landscaping and the improvements along Florida Avenue, the scenic highway setback. And D.R. Horton is still in talks with the owner of the 27 lots and Lot 48, Mr. John Petty. But this staff just wanted to share, the pro rata share calculation, and how that was determined. D.R. Horton owns 80 lots of the 107 remaining, which is 75%. The owner of lot 20 of owner B owns lot 27 lots, which is 25%. So this would be a fair share of cost to distribute between the owners, and the 75% would include Caltrans encroachment permits and installation of curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and the 25% as allotted would include landscape and irrigation of lot 48. And then, of course, lot 48 would have to be dedicated to the lighting, landscaping, and maintenance district. The other item that staff wanted to clarify was the question regarding fencing. This illustration shows the north boundary location of the vinyl fencing that D.R. Horton will be installing. And condition 29 has been added to the proposed conditions of approval, which states that the cedar fence would be removed and replaced by D.R. Horton. And also the home builder would meet with the property owners and obtain a liability waiver. And this is just to illustrate the properties that would be affected by that condition. Regarding the plotting, D.R. Horton has agreed to plot single-family homes along the north side of the development, which are all the lots here. The red are the single-family homes, including here. This would also be to a single story. This is shown just for illustration of the to show the change between what was plotted before with the 1-story and the 2-story, and how these have been this plotting has been revised. Additionally, D.R. Horton has omitted the Spanish-style architecture and added bungalow style. And here is the table indicating the number of the single-story homes. There is 29 proposed. They're 1,898 square feet. There's going to proposing 11 of the traditional style, 8 of the bungalow, 10 of the Tuscan. Of Plan 2, which is 2-story, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and a loft. 7 traditional, 10 bungalow, and 7 Tuscan. And Plan 3, also 2-story, 2,435 square feet, 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, and a suite. 9 traditional, 9 bungalow, and 11 Tuscan. Here's an illustration of the proposed bungalow style. It shows a porch in the front of the single-story. The 2-story also include a porch. It is smaller, but they also include other elements of the bungalow style, which is the columns and the enhanced base. Referring back to the undergrounding of the existing utilities and the waiver, this illustration shows the posts or poles on Lake Street that have been waived from being underground, and that this shows 3. This is the pole that is on the north side of Orange Grove, and then these 2 are on the south side of Orange Grove. These are to remain, along with the poles that are along Lake Avenue to the north. So this would remain in line. This illustration shows the Edison lines that now are on the south side of Florida. Cross over to the north side, go over about 300 feet, and come back south on the south side of Florida, and these are to remain as well. And this was through the approval by the council on February 25th of the waiving of the undergrounding. For illustration, these are the cable communication lines, and these shall be underground. And again, this is an illustration of where the cable lines are, and these would be underground for the entire stretch of Florida Avenue. There were some items that were brought up by the residents of the Orchard. One had to do with property tax, and we did contact a consultant who deals with the county tax assessor and the city of Hemet, and it was made clear to us that the Orchard is not paying maintenance of the scenic highway setback on their tax bill. The items that do show up on their bill have to do with paying their portion of the landscaping and maintenance, on the track. We also had a question regarding fire protection, and the fire chief had stated that the city of Hemet currently maintains 5 fire stations, 4 fully staffed with engines. Fire Station 5 is staffed with a medic squad to ensure continuous emergency medical response to our residents in East Hemet. The Hemet Fire Department's fire response is adequate and will continue to meet the needs of all our residents. This is accomplished daily by the Hemet Fire Department and with the assistance of outside agencies, CAL FIRE and Sabobas, through mutual aid. Additionally, the City of Hemet has a residential sprinkler ordinance in place that applies to all new development in the City of Hemet, including Citrus Point. This was an item that came up regarding Lake Street, and originally the conditions to map 31620 stated that this area was to be landscaped and trees were to be planted 40 feet on center. And this was added as condition number 14, just to clarify that this is what D.R. Horton was going to propose in compliance with condition 41 of the map. The residents of Orchard have requested that this right-of-way be concrete all the way through, as illustrated here, and to eliminate the landscape here and then just install sidewalk from end of curb here to the block wall. D.R. Horton is in agreement with this request, but this request will require council approval and the revision of track map 31620, condition 41. If the Planning Commission concurs with this request, this would result in a change to condition number 14 of Site Development Review 20-004, and it would be as illustrated below. I do have the pages that these conditions apply to in the staff report, so if you need those numbers, I can give those to you. Another request made by the Orchard residents was to eliminate the Parkway, which is this little green area in front of the homes. Originally, the map does require parkways. The previous development in map 25168 is monolithic, as is indicated here. The conditions do say it was to be built this way. The residents would prefer, of Orchard would prefer that the Parkway be eliminated so that it will be more cohesive, and especially the 3 homes that are on Orange Grove, that there isn't a difference in the way the Parkway is set up. There are some advantages to having a Parkway and then a sidewalk. These benefits include clear ADA access. So if a person in a wheelchair is traveling along here, they are going to have the lift and the drop where the driveway aprons are located. And also the Parkway allows for the utility easements, and it also creates separation between pedestrians and vehicular traffic.
Chairman, if I may add, Deerhorn is their preference is to keep within line with the original track conditions, which would be the Parkway, as well as providing landscaping along Lake Street, not to pave all the way to the wall, but rather provide landscaping along Lake Street, and also maintaining the Parkway as the original condition states within the track map.
So would the Parkway then be maintained by CFD, or would that be maintained by the individual homeowners?
The trees within the Parkway will be maintained by LLMD. However, the ground cover of the grass will be maintained by the homeowner.
And the irrigation. If the Planning Commission is in agreement with the above, then condition number 14 of Site Development Review 20-004, which is page 60 on the staff report, would be revised to state the sidewalk shall extend from the edge of curb to the block wall. And also there would be an additional condition added to Site Development Review 20-004 in the conditions of approval to eliminate the interior streets of the Parkway and to be monolithic. These conditions can be added, but it will require the conditions to the map to be taken to the council for the changes to the original map, so that those conditions may be changed or revised. And those conditions, this will be condition 20B and 23 of the original conditions of approval, and condition 41.
I have a question for condition 41. So is Lake Street, it's not currently landscaped, or just the median is not landscaped?
On Lake Street, right now all it has is street and then the property. The conditions require the extension of the street to the appropriate width, curb and gutter, and sidewalk. In addition to that, another 5 feet of landscaping. And that's illustrated here. This shows the width of the road, the curb and gutter, the sidewalk, and the location of the landscaping.
So, Chairman, if I could add a little to that, the existing track 25168 actually has houses fronting onto lake. So there's not a side portion of sidewalk and then somebody's side yard. It's actually the front yard that they're facing onto. So there's nothing above this particular proposal that has any of the side that are facing Lake Street. So they're all fronting onto Lake Street. So what the applicant is proposing is to keep with the original conditions of the track, and they'll put in the sidewalk and maintain the landscaping as it was proposed with the track map. So they'll place trees every 40 feet as it's conditioned in the track.
But no other landscaping.
That is correct.
So the condition 41, I got a little confused on the next slide. It says to remove.
This is the Parkway that is in front of the homes, not on Lake Street.
The next one, I think it is.
So here?
Yes, Condition 41 is to eliminate landscaping along Lake Street. So just they'll still install the trees, the hardscape.
Correct, along Lake Street, so that it's consistent with the original track conditions.
Gotcha.
And so if not, you said it would have to go back through City Council if we change the original track map?
Correct. And that's not before you tonight.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that would be, you would...
Correct. And the preference of the applicant is to maintain the condition as it was approved with the track map.
So at this point, Planning Commission can adopt resolution number PC 2020-013, approving site development review 20-004, subject to the existing conditions of approval or the revised. And this just shows the typical for the fencing. The interior fencing is vinyl. That's the fencing between the homes, the gate, and of course if it applies, which it would, on the rear of the property, and the block wall, which would be the perimeter along Lake Street and Florida Avenue, and then over on the east boundary for illustration purposes. We also wanted to point out the findings that are required for site development review, and they are listed here, A through E. The responses to the conditions are in the resolution, and I don't know if you would like me to go through these, but these are the conditions or the findings that staff had to make in order to recommend this project for approval. Hemet Municipal Code 90-48B1 says that a major site development review is required for site design and architecture of single-family residential projects containing more than 5 parcels. And Hemet Municipal Code 90-48.1 says that the Planning Commission has the authority to review, impose conditions of approval which pertain to the development of the property and approve or deny site development reviews. Property owners and tenants within a 500-foot radius of the project were notified of the public hearing on June 2nd, 2020, with a 10-day hearing in the paper. Since then, the project has been continued to date certain, and so no further noticing has been required. We did receive email correspondence from Mrs. Savage, Ms. Carrie Davis, and Ms. Carol Kendrick, and those have been provided to you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. This is getting complex, so good job on that. Questions for staff? I have a couple. You guys want to go ahead? Condition 29, the vinyl fencing, the removing of the cedar, and I could talk to the applicant about this too, but was there a few lots, and forgive me, but I'm reading some of the comments from the public. It seemed like maybe there was 3 or 4 houses that weren't included in that. Is that true?
Yes, the homes that are on the south side of Orange Grove that are existing that also have the wood and cedar fencing around the sides and the back.
So they will also remove the cedar there, or we can talk to him about that.
Yes, you can talk to Dan Boyd from D.R. Horton about that.
And I read that the electrical box is 2 inches too high, but it's further than the 30-foot cross.
Cutback.
Okay.
And that's okay.
Okay. And then to clarify, looking through the staff report, it looked as if the Spanish style was not completely eliminated, or was it completely?
It is eliminated. We did put a sticker on each one of the illustrations.
But not all of them.
We try to catch them all.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Removed, yeah, those are omitted.
And then the cable undergrounded on Highway 74, the that's the communications or the cable. I'm assuming if that didn't do that funny across the street and then the trees, then you're going to underground the cable. You could underground the power at the same time, but because of the weird shape, it just isn't feasible to do that, huh?
So the cable will be underground all the way through on Florida Avenue. It's just that back and forth of the Edison lines.
Okay,
That
power won't be. Yeah. Okay, I'm good for now. This is a continued public hearing, so it's still open, but, I'm sorry, you okay? Go ahead.
So, first off, I want to thank you, HB, for spending quite a bit of time with me this last week to help me understand what my biggest concern was, which was the Lot 48 and the Highway 74 setback. So I just want to kind of go through what I think I understand about it and clarify that that's what I understand, if I could. So that highway setback, along with other improvements, were a condition of the original track map 31620. It was originally intended that that be done prior to the issuance of the first occupancy or CLO, right? But back then, there was 110 lots built out, and for some reason, we did not get that section built at that time. But it still lies with the track conditions. So there's a total of 217 lots in this track that are owned or were owned by two developers, JDP Development and D.R. Horton, as of right now. All right, so there's 110 of those lots were completed and built and sold by JDP Development prior to the last recession. JDP Development still maintains 27 of those lots, so they have a total of 137 of the 217 lots for that tract. So actually, it's more like 63% of the total tract is what their responsibility or their share, if you will.
If we're going to look at the entire 52 acres as one.
Right. So what's remaining is 137 lots. I'm sorry.
107, 80, and 27.
80 and 20. So there's 80 lots that D.R. Horton owns and 27 that JDP Development owns, which establishes that 25-75% split. So as of right now, what we are requiring of D.R. Horton is not on the original 110 lots that were already built out that should have not been given a certificate of occupancy at the time until the highway setback was completed, because that should have been done first. But based on the remaining lots, there's a 25-75% ratio, and D.R. Horton is taking responsibility of 75% of the projected costs of that entire setback, which their responsibility is going to be within the Caltrans right-of-way, which they have the ability to do now, and that includes the hardscape, the street, the curb and gutter, sidewalk, and then they'll do that prior to the issuance of the first CLO of those 80 lots.
Pending Caltrans approval. You still have to go through Caltrans.
And then when those remaining 27 lots get developed, they, JDP Development or whoever owns it at that time, would then be responsible to complete the softscape, the 25% of the current estimated value of the total cost of that setback prior to their first issuance of occupancy. So it seems like a theme of a lot of the comments. And first off, I'm so impressed with after going through last week's and then the 3 hours of comments and the 3 hours of legitimate concerns and staff's professionalism and frankly patience through some of those comments and some of the petty insults that were said. I really appreciate the level of professionalism that was displayed. And further, after going through all of the responses and all the work that was done on this, I'm very happy to be a part of this commission.
Thank you.
So with that being said, I am fully supportive of, and I'm actually quite impressed with the creative way of trying to fix this problem. One of the themes is trying to keep it the way that the original track map was set out, and we are getting it built. We're getting some of it built. Might not get it all built right now, but we're getting some of it built, what we can, what we have control of. Also, I really appreciate D.R. Horton's willingness to listen to the residents, listen to those concerns, make adjustments as they can. I think that showed a lot of interest in being a good partner in our community. There's one other thing I wanted to say, but I think I'll wait until we get to that. So, anyways, I just wanted to confirm my understanding of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
I have a couple questions to ask in reference to, the TUMP fee, as I was just discussing with HP. I just want to be clear that he's excluded because this was prior to 2003, I believe, or 2005, because he's been a part of that project since before that, so he's been excluded out of that because it happened after. So I'll clarify that's true.
Not D.R. Horton. The map itself was in place during the time, and it was in substantial conformance at that time. So it doesn't have anything to do with the actual owner. It has to do with the completion of the map.
Because I know, like I mentioned, the HP, the exclusion from TUMF is low income, and they have other exclusions to be excluded out. So if DR is not, if he wasn't involved prior, why is he able to not be a part of that?
Because the map itself was exempt. So it doesn't matter whether it's D.R. Horton or ABC development or 123 development. Because of the map itself was exempt, whoever buys or purchases or develops that map is exempt.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for staff? If not, I would like to hear from the applicant if we could, or at least have him come up and we could ask him questions. Evening, sir.
Good evening.
Name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair and members of Planning Commission, my name is Dan Boyd. I represent D.R. Horton, and our address is 2280 Wardlow Circle, Corona, California, 92880. I just want to say thank you to Soledad for an excellent presentation. I will be making a couple clarifications on that. But before I begin my presentation and open up for your questions, I'd like to review basically the progress that we've made from the first Planning Commission to this evening, many of the items of which were under the direction of this commission. First of all, I'd like to state that Horton has agreed to plot all single-story homes within 25168. Those are lots that basically are within the smaller of the three tracts that we're purchasing. I think we noted that last time, but I just want to make sure that we account for that tonight. The revised current site plan will include all single stories along the 15 lots along our common boundary. So as the staff report indicated, we have obviously made that but that modification on the current site plan before you this evening. We further, since the last hearing, took and re-examined the Spanish elevation, and that staff report indicated to you that we believe that the bungalow is more representative of the theming and the components and the styling of the existing homes. So we felt that was a more compatible product. And yes, the Spanish will not be plotted in this project. The clarification essentially with the Lake Street detail of sidewalk and parkway. Right now what we have is a condition of approval that requires a 6-foot sidewalk with a 5-foot parkway. and that's consistent with condition number 41 of the underlying map. That is in fact is what we are doing to remain in compliance. So there would be no change in conditions of approval to that. With respect to the interior street section, the same. We intend fully to comply with the condition of approval, as the staff indicated. That interior streets would include a parkway. The community on both of these topics would prefer that we extend the 6-foot sidewalk all the way on Lake to absorb the landscape portion. And on the interior, they would prefer to have not a landscape parkway. But that would be in violation of the conditions of approval. And furthermore, to change those would require city council action, which we're intending not to do. With respect to the next item, the commission suggested, and we obviously followed suit, and we participated within a community meeting that was held this past July 1st. It was an online COVID-safe meeting, of course, and during the course of that meeting, several people were in attendance, many of which we heard from a couple weeks ago. And we discussed candidly and freely the concerns and comments from the community, and are too many to summarize here, but there were a lot of clarifications made in that call, in that meeting. We felt that it served a great opportunity for us to kind of roll our sleeves up, put our hats down, not be under the pressure of the Planning Commission, and candidly have an exchange. And that indeed is what it exactly turned out to be. Some of the things that were clarified were the undergrounding of the communication lines on Florida, and we basically made sure that, and there was some confusion in the initial staff report, so we clarified that item. And there is a guy wire that flies over Lake Avenue, and that too would be removed. So there's a total of 10 poles on Florida that are coming down, and a total of 1 pole that affects Lake. So we talked about that in detail. Obviously, the big ticket item remains, and probably will remain tonight, is Lot 48, and how we arrived at the bifurcation, the cost allocation, and how we arrived at a percentage of responsibility. This issue has been discussed ad nauseum, but I guess I need to continue that a little bit. The reason for that bifurcation and allocation was because we don't own Lot 48. We can't be forced by staff or the city, nor can we do improvements on property we don't own. So rather than walk away, we decided that we would try and solve how we can best address this. And, going into past history is fascinating, but it doesn't solve the problem tonight. So for whatever reasons, those improvements were not installed. Be that as it may, it never happened, despite the conditions of approval. But we are definitely stepping up with our percentage, and we're definitely stepping up in conjunction with the fact that we had to deal with Caltrans. And I'm sure most of you know that Caltrans is not a pleasant agency at all times to deal with in terms of time urgency. That's the reason why that we asked, as part of our clarification, that we can have the time it's going to take to get the Caltrans permit in play. And that was the reason why we actually now wanted to clarify the staff report in this regard, that the occupancy of the first occupancy of the last phase of our development, our 80 lots, that will give us the time frame to work with Caltrans. So the improvements that Horton is committing to would be completed prior to the issuance of the first occupancy of the last phase of D.R. Horton. And that time frame was come up with because it takes several months to get through Caltrans. So we didn't want to put a spot in a position of failure. We wanted to create an opportunity to make sure that we did not have to go back to staff for any further variations of that. With respect to the traffic concerns, we discussed that candidly. We heard a couple comments about traffic concerns, and so we explained that the nature of the project, as it was approved then, has remained constant as it sits today. There have been no increase in number of lots, no traffic increases as a result of the project. And so any traffic concerns at this point really isn't a project driver, it really is a city driver as to whether or not the city's traffic engineer would want to go out and conduct certain traffic warrants for any additional roadway improvements. But the project itself hasn't changed. We talked obviously a lot about the cedar fencing, and I think that there's a couple of clarifications and updates in that regard. Since our first meeting to this evening, we remain committed that we agreed to replace the existing cedar fencing along that common boundary and along the smaller tract 25168. And in doing that, we heard concerns in the community, which we addressed at our community meeting, and that there are a few lots, and maybe more than a few lots, that may have some complexities to it. So what we agreed to in our condition that we would meet individually or collectively with the homeowner. We would establish any particular unique challenges in replacing that fence, and we would address the same. The waiver of liability would have to be signed because we're going on other people's property, and so we can't be held liable for that nor any damage that's caused by the replacement of the cedar fence. And then following that would be the actual final fence. There are a couple of homeowners, maybe one or two, that have already stated that they don't want their cedar fence removed. So in that case, that won't be a problem. We'll just have to make sure that our vinyl fencing is continuous, so that at the end of the day, we have one continuous vinyl fence on our side, but perhaps their minds will change. The next big item, obviously, was the use of single-story units. And we said and explained our view and our opinion at this community meeting. And essentially, what I asserted at our first Planning Commission meeting, and we'll do again this evening, is that staff has made a recommendation that the project fully complies with the development standards of the project, of the city. So with respect to the project, any applicant, not Horton, any applicant, that's what our guiding light is. We seek those documents, and we rely upon staff to review the proposals and make a recommendation, in which case they have done this evening, approving the architecture. But as I stated before earlier, we did re-examine that Spanish elevation, and we decided to replace it with the bungalow. We'll never get 100% consensus on this. We'll never get all the homeowners in line with this. Everyone has their own personal views of architecture. But one of the things I like to bring from a professional standpoint, and we've been in the home building business for many years, and as you all know, we've built more than a few homes. Architecture is an evolution, and I said this last hearing. It's not stagnant. What was approved nearly 20 years ago is wonderful. But doesn't necessarily mean it's wonderful today. Floor plans equate to efficiency of livability. And particularly in these days, we have discovered, particularly in our surrounding projects, that a combination of a two-story and a one-story are very, very, very palatable, because there are those that really enjoy no stairs, single-story living. It consumes a little bit more of the lot versus a second story that provides more opportunity for families and spaces, and some of our product even allows for separate living. So if you have a grandma or grandpa or a kid that refuses to stay in school, we've got a plethora of opportunity, and we have found that to be very needed in Hemet, and of course the surrounding area, which has been successful. So our view, our professional view, is that having both is a wonderful complement to make a successful community. At the end of the day, that's what we all want. So those were some of the items that were discussed. The meeting took perhaps a couple hours, and I was able to walk away feeling encouraged. And following the meeting, we had some very nice emails appreciating, sticking it out there and working with the community. But I think that's an expectation of an applicant. It's not a luxury. And I think that we worked under your direction to appease to that. There is one other item that I think is fairly significant. It's way too early to determine whether or not it would be reality. But one of the items, and I can't recall which of the commissioners here had indicated, but it was suggested that we sit down with John Petty, and in fact we did that. It was another COVID call. And we had a candid conversation with John, and he expressed many of his viewpoints that he did with each of you at the last hearing, and perhaps we'll hear some of that again this evening. But he kind of walked through his methodology of his development, kind of walked through why certain things occurred and not occurred in his view, and, offered his critique with our project. I would say most of it was constructive, some of it was fun. But nevertheless, we had that conversation, and we respected John for that. And, we're all adults, and so we complied with that. As a result of that, this afternoon, at approximately 3:30 this afternoon, and I can't state whether John has received it, and if he has, he certainly had probably not a chance to fully review it. But we had tendered an offer to purchase the entire project from John Petty, and that would specifically include his 27 lots and all the lots related to the scenic highway corridor. If that transaction is successful, and again, it's just the start of negotiations, but if that were successful on our watch, Horton would agree to a revised condition of approval this evening, and that if we are to receive clear title for his property, the 27 lots, and the lots that comprise of the scenic highway corridor, that condition would obligate D.R. Horton to install the entire scenic corridor. We would thereby own the property, control the property, have the additional 27 lots to participate in the allocation of costs, and we would move forward. However, I just want to reiterate, we're way early in the process, and there's no way that John Petty this evening could comment whether he's reviewed it, agreed with it. It's part of the long process. But we did have a discussion with John on that, and we did our homework, we did our analysis, and we put forth an offer to purchase. So, again, we would agree to keep this process moving forward, which is very, very critical, is that we would agree to a condition that the applicant, subject to receiving clear title of the 27 lots and the associated scenic highway lots, I believe there's 3 of them in total, upon clear title and receipt, that we would agree to the condition to abate this allocation and move forward with 100% of it. So those are some significant updates. I think at your direction and urgence and your motivation, we took it to heart, and we basically moved forward with that. There are probably some other items that I've missed in terms of the details, but basically those were the major salient points that we accomplished over the last few weeks. So with that, if you have any questions of myself, I will continue to stand here and take your questions and hopefully give you some good answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boyd. Questions for the applicant?
The only thing that I don't think was addressed was the 3 existing models in regards to the cedar fence versus vinyl. I mean, I think visually those 3 would be the most important just because they're going to be inset in the middle of the brand new homes.
Yeah, you're referring to the 3 existing,
correct, yeah.
Existing complex.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. It was a great question. It was on my list, but I think I just omitted it, not by intention. That was a comment made a couple of weeks ago. Why aren't we replacing that? So we are going to further add that to our list, that we agree that we will replace the cedar fencing with the vinyl fencing that basically is the rear of the existing model 3 lots and our adjacent property. And in that regard, it will also include the 2 side returns of our adjacent lots, which is going to be vinyl fencing anyway. So we will be adding that, and if staff needs clarification, we can add that to our condition of approval.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, but the 2 fences in between those 3 lots would not be included in that?
You're referring to the cedar fence?
Yeah, so...
Well, the cedar fence, would assuming we get the waiver, which I anticipate that we would, that we're physically taking out the cedar fence, right, and replacing it with the vinyl fence.
But, so there's 3 lots that are adjacent to each other, and you'll do the two side returns on the outside edge, but not the side returns in between those lots?
That's correct. Yeah.
If the residents were to prefer that, and then that way that whole street all looks the same, would you be open to?
Well, you're referring to replacing their cedar fencing between the side yards, exclusive of the exterior fence line. I will further agree to that.
The only other question that I had for you,
But I just want to reiterate for the record, it all requires a waiver.
I understand.
Okay.
And I would assume that the residents would want it, but it would sure seem that it would look a lot more contiguous, and to have that whole side of the street all vinyl and all the same. So thank you for the clarification in regards to when the occupancy of the first occupancy of the last phase. How many lots are left with the last phase out of the 80?
Can you tell me that answer?
Last phase?
Yeah.
Is it relatively equal?
Last phase, approximately how many lots?
The last phase of ours?
Yes.
8.
8 lots.
Yes.
10%. And then would, if the transaction does ultimately work out with the offer that you just tendered, would that same condition would be for the 100% of the improvement? So that would be hardscape and softscape at that same point.
Correct. We're still dealing with Caltrans.
So I fully empathize with that.
Yeah.
I am currently involved with trying to get a new service installed.
Right. Then you know the firsthand.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Jacob, got anything?
Actually, John just asked a question I was going to ask him.
Okay. Okay. I think that's good for now. Thank you very much. Mr.
Okay.
Boyd.
There is one item that was addressed by staff, and I'd like to insert some information into the record. It's not very exciting stuff, so if you can bear with me and your patience, I'd appreciate it. At the last commission meeting, there was a gentleman that offered some public testimony concerning his comments and concerns with respect to CEQA. And I think for anything else, it got a little confusing. I think staff this evening did an excellent job enumerating the legality of what we're doing versus what we're not doing. But there's been some movement, some very exciting movement in this particular regard. In fact, it really is spot on and indicative of what we've discussed this evening. So if I may, for the record and for the pleasure of the attorney here, there was a case in San Diego, and it was called the San Diego Broadway Complex Coalition versus the City of San Diego. It was heard in the Fourth Appellate Court, and it basically held that subsequent environmental review under CEQA is not required if the scope of the agency discretion is limited to matters unrelated to the environmental effects alleged to be at issue. In the San Diego case, a project opponent sought CEQA analysis of greenhouse gas and climate change and effects of a previously approved project. The court found subsequent approval regarding the aesthetic aspects of the project did not trigger supplemental analysis of the project's climate change effects because the petitioners did not demonstrate the agency had discretionary authority to address climate change concerns. Similar to the case before you tonight, the project before Planning Commission this evening is the architectural review. Architectural review of 80 single-family homes within a previously approved project. The aesthetic impacts of the project are unrelated to the purported traffic impacts that form the basis of Mr. Papp's position that the new traffic impact analysis is required under CEQA. In this case, there is simply no cause and effect relationship between the project's architecture and the potential traffic impacts. Simply stated in layman terms, as staff has indicated, there has been no substantial changes to this project. There are substantial changes, and there have been no substantial changes in the project circumstances or There has been no new information that could have been known at the time the original negative deck was prepared and becomes available, and such changes or new information require major revisions to the negative deck, or there is a substantial increase in the severity of the previously identified significant effects. I just want to go officially. There has been nothing presented to you of record that shows that there's any impact whatsoever by this architectural review. And as laborious as it sounds, that's all that we're really doing, is we're implementing an action that was previously approved by the larger project, being the approval of the 80 lots. So while I respect comments of the community, I also think it's urged to factually correct and make certain that the record is clear for purposes of legality. With that, there's no other questions. I will come back if you ask.
Thank you very much. And again, if you're teleconferencing in, we're going to take local people that are here first, so be patient, hang in there, and we're going to hear from the public here. And if we can, the first one I have is Terry Davis. Mario, please. And again, if I can remind you, it's 2 minutes, and I think there's a timer going, so if you hear a little ding-dong going off, wrap it up. We're not going to be completely to the second, but go ahead.
For the record, my name is Carrie Davis Medill, M-E-D-I-L-L. I've signed every email that way, and I'm not sure why it keeps being said that I'm Mrs. Davis, because I'm not. I'm here tonight because I'm really struggling. I really want this project done. I really want, it's to my advantage, but the concerns that I have is at every discussion, the developer doesn't want to change the map, because if he does change the map, it changes the conditions from what was approved in November of 2003. And I reviewed the conditions, and the condition number 17 talks about architectural compatibility. I'm not saying one story, I'm saying architecturally compatible. The other thing that concerns me with that is, in looking at the proposal tonight, yes, they've agreed to one story, but they have one plan for the one stories. So there's going to be a whole row of houses that are all the same, maybe with a front elevation that's different. And the 3 houses that are existing there, if you notice, those are all on the front facing. Those are 1 stories, but behind them are 6 feet higher, 2-story homes. And those houses don't have as big of yards as the rest of the track, because those were the models. They're smaller. So again, I implore you to send them back to do a little bit better job. I'm not saying disapprove it. The other thing I'd also like you to look at is a plot map. Condition number 68 and 74 from the original Planning Commission conditions of approval says there has to be a punch out on McIntosh or somewhere to Florida Avenue. That plot map doesn't show anything where there's going to be a punch out. And Condition 74, the police department also says that. So again, it's that double standard where they're saving money and standing firm to adhere to TOMF and all of these things, CEQA, so it doesn't cost them money. The reality is there's other parts of it that they're not. They're making a mint. The project will pencil no matter what. They're saving $600,000 in TOMF fees. I mean, that's the reality. But again, I want the project developed, and I'm kind of, they've compromised and made some concessions, and I get that. But it's still not quite there. And if it was in your neighborhood, it isn't adjacent. The only entrance and only exits to this new community is through our existing community, which makes it an extension, not adjacent. So I'm just asking for something that was already on the conditions of approval. And they want to adhere to not changing the track map and not changing those landscape requests, because if they do, guess what? It's not the same plot map, and it'll cost them money. So let them adhere to everything and be responsible to that and make the money that they want to make from it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker will be Ms. Carol Kendrick. We didn't start the time yet. It's okay. Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Carol Kendrick. I live at 5476 Nectar Avenue. And I did provide a letter today. I did want to go over some of my comments, but I also wanted to address